Ryan Mercer never thought betrayal would come wrapped in laughter. He stood in the middle of a Beverly Hills ballroom, the chandeliers throwing cruel light across his face, as Celine, his wife of 20 years, handed him divorce papers. Their 3 sons cheered, champagne glasses raised, cameras flashing, and Franco Cordero, her billionaire lover, smirked from the corner. But it wasn't the papers that gutted him. It was hearing Cor, his youngest, the boy he'd taught to ride a bike, shout over the crowd, "We're changing our last names, so we're not stuck with yours." For Ryan, that was the moment the floor split. Not just a broken marriage, not just public humiliation, but the instant realization that everything, the home, the love, the family he built, had been hollowed out behind his back. And as the room roared with laughter, Ryan felt the one thing that would carry him through: stillness, the kind that comes before a storm. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories bring people together from every corner of the world. Your thoughts and comments are what make this community so special, and we're truly grateful to have you here. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story filled with drama, resilience, and unexpected twists. Now settle in, get comfortable, and maybe grab your favorite drink, because this is a tale you won't want to miss. Let's get started. I always believed that betrayal had a sound: the breaking of a glass, a slammed door, a shouted accusation. But when it finally arrived in my life, it came in silence. At 5 a.m., I sat alone in the guest house at the edge of our Bel Air estate, sipping an espresso I didn't taste, watching the soft pulse of security monitors light up my desk. The main house loomed across the lawn, a sleek, modern marvel of glass and steel, once the heart of everything Celine and I had built over 2 decades. Now it felt like enemy territory. Celine Virelli, once my partner, my lover, my co-architect of a life most people envied. Lately, she was a stranger. Where once there were shared late-night talks and quiet breakfasts, there were now hushed phone calls, sudden work trips, locked doors, and a new air of casual contempt. She'd asked for space 3 weeks ago, and I gave it to her, moving into the guest house without a fight, telling myself it was temporary. But even then, I knew. Celine had been disappearing for months, her calendar filled with gala invitations, her phone constantly pinging with Franco Cordero's name. The billionaire art dealer, a man dripping with charisma, cash, and the kind of careless charm that made people like Celine feel alive. I had once respected him. Now I watched him. The boys, Gala, 19, Ellis, 17, Cor, 15, drifted to Celine's side like iron filings to a magnet. They loved her shine, her energy, the way she made life seem like a perpetual red carpet event. I, their father, was the man in the background, the quiet strategist, the builder of companies, the one who never competed for their applause. But even a quiet man has limits. That morning, the encrypted folder arrived on my work laptop, sent anonymously from a burner address. My military background, logistics and cyber intelligence, had trained me to expect the worst, to read between the lines. And yet, I paused before opening it, feeling the faintest tremor in my hands. Inside, a 47-second video. Grainy but clear. Last night's rooftop gala. Celine, hair wet, champagne in hand, straddling Franco in a rooftop hot tub. His hands slid under the water, her head tilted back in laughter, the guests clapping and hooting around them. One of my sons, Cor, leaned over the edge of the tub, grinning, raising a glass. I didn't blink. I didn't throw the laptop. I didn't curse. I simply exhaled and set the cup down. I walked to the window and looked across the lawn to the house where Celine and the boys were still sleeping. The post-nup agreement we'd signed 3 years earlier, Celine's idea to protect her growing assets, sat in a locked file. The legal team I'd quietly engaged weeks ago waited for my signal. The backup accounts were ready, the digital evidence stored across multiple locations. Phase 1 was done. Celine thought she was living her best life, wrapped in Franco's glittering world, surrounded by applause and influence. What she didn't know was that I'd spent the past month peeling back every layer. Financials, messages, hotel records. I knew about the secret credit cards, the hidden studio apartment Franco had helped her lease downtown, the money funneled out of our joint accounts. I knew about the boys' recent gifts, a new car for Gala, a luxury watch for Ellis, designer sneakers for Core, all quietly funded by Franco. And I knew about the plan. This wasn't just infidelity, it was public humiliation. Celine had told them, Franco, the boys, maybe even her inner circle, that at my upcoming 40th birthday party, she would serve me divorce papers in front of everyone. Empowerment, she called it. A new chapter. The boys were in on it, laughing, calling it savage, cruel, and hilarious. I knew because I'd watched them, not just through phone records and security cameras, but in the way they'd started talking to me. Sharp, dismissive, impatient. Core, who once followed me everywhere, now barely looked up from his phone. Ellis, once my chess partner, called me old man with a smirk. Gala, my oldest, hadn't spoken to me in weeks. It wasn't heartbreak that filled me. It was clarity. I pulled out the folder from the bottom drawer of the safe. 3 paternity tests, completed and verified. I hadn't wanted to know. But now that I did, I couldn't unknow. 0% biological match. Not for Gala, not for Ellis, not for Core. I sat back in the chair, fingers steepled under my chin, and let the facts settle like stones in water. Outside, dawn broke over Los Angeles, casting a pale glow over the infinity pool, the glass walls, the empty patio where Celine and I used to sit and plan our lives. Inside, the house remained quiet, just the hum of refrigerators, the click of the HVAC, the faint whisper of a life about to shatter. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was ready. Today, I would let them set the stage, let Celine and Franco prepare their theater of betrayal, let the boys play their roles as if they understood the rules. But they had underestimated me. They thought I was a man of silence because I was weak. They were about to learn I was a man of silence because I was calculating. By the time the sun set, I would be the last one standing. As I watched Celine emerge from the main house, hair pulled back in effortless perfection, laughing into her phone, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not love, not loss, relief. I whispered to the empty room just loud enough for myself. It's time. I stood, straightened my jacket, and crossed the room to the waiting laptop. One keystroke sent the final confirmation to the legal team. Another flipped the financial protocols into motion. One last breath. Then I stepped outside. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories bring people together from every corner of the world. Your thoughts and comments are what make this community so special, and we're truly grateful to have you here. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story filled with drama, resilience, and unexpected twists. Now settle in, get comfortable, and maybe grab your favorite drink because this is a tale you won't want to miss. Let's get started. The night before the party, I sat in the guest house, the glow of 3 monitors painting pale light across the room. On one screen, the house, Celine laughing on the couch, Core tossing a sneaker across the floor, Ellis slouched over his phone, Gala pacing by the window, all of them lit up by the same reckless energy. On another screen, encrypted bank transfers, lines of numbers I knew by heart now, and on the last, a folder marked Final. I had gone over the details 100 times. I wasn't hoping to find something new. I was memorizing the battlefield. Celine's second phone, the one she thought I didn't know about, sat in her bag upstairs. It was synced to the smart home system months ago. Messages from Franco flashed on it at all hours. I read them quietly, watched as her work meetings blurred into dinner reservations, as corporate strategy sessions turned into spa weekends at hotels Franco owned, into late-night check-ins at his penthouse. But what hit hardest wasn't Celine. It was the boys. In the beginning, I told myself they were victims of her manipulation, caught up in her glow, unaware of the games being played. I clung to that lie until the audio came in. Earlier that evening, I'd patched into the security feed in the main house, mostly to check on the usual. Doors locked, lights off, alarm systems prepped. But the microphone was on. I heard them before I saw them. Ellis. Dude, it's going to be savage. Gala. He won't even know what hit him. Celine's voice floated in, bright and smooth, as if she were coaching a performance. It's not about being cruel, it's about being honest. About all of us living our truth. Cor laughed in the background. Mom, you're cold. No, baby, she purred. I'm free. I sat perfectly still. My fingers didn't twitch, my jaw didn't tighten, my heart rate barely shifted. It was like my body had already accepted a truth my mind hadn't wanted to admit. They weren't just bystanders, they were part of it. The public divorce at my birthday party wasn't a spontaneous moment of empowerment. It was a show they had rehearsed. I leaned back in the chair, exhaling slowly, staring at the security footage. Celine threw her head back, laughing at something Cor said. Gala pretended to box with Ellis in the corner. These were the same boys I had taught to swim, to ride bikes, to navigate heartbreak and math exams and college applications. I wondered if they remembered. At midnight, I opened the final folder, the DNA test results. 0% match. For all three. The first time I'd suspected, I hated myself. It was petty, I thought beneath me. Something bitter men did when they wanted to control women or punish children. But then, small things piled up. Blood types, medical histories, dates that didn't add up. And now, staring at the cold finality of the reports, I understood why Celine had been so confident, why she had been so certain she could humiliate me and not fear the fallout. She had never feared me. I closed the folder carefully, pressing it flat against the desk, feeling the paper under my palm like a heartbeat. I should have felt rage. I should have wanted to tear something apart. But the truth was, I felt light, weightless, as if the thing I'd been holding together all these years had never really existed, and all I had to do now was let it fall. At 2 a.m., I called Jackson. He picked up on the second ring. You sure you're ready for this? He asked quietly. I'm sure. Once it starts, you can't walk it back. I don't want to. There was a pause, and then his voice, steady and grounded, the same voice I'd relied on through military tours and business deals, came through the line. Then let's finish it. By morning, the house stirred to life. Celine emerged from the front door, wrapped in a silk robe, laughing into her phone as a stylist followed her out, suitcase in hand. The boys tumbled out after her, Cor wrestling with Ellis, Gala tapping furiously on his phone. I watched from the guest house, finishing my espresso, the bitter edge of it clean on my tongue. Celine's laughter rang across the lawn, a sound I had once built my life around. Now, it was background noise. At noon, I drove to the downtown office, where Jackson waited with the last of the documentation. Franco's financial footprint wasn't just messy, it was criminal. For years, he had been moving money through shell companies, art investments, and off-the-books stipends to young male assistants he hired, mentored, and quietly discarded. The kind of men who didn't have the power to fight back, who had tried, in small ways, to raise flags, before being buried under legal threats and NDAs. Celine's fingerprints were all over the transfers. Not because she orchestrated them, because she funded them. She was his bank. and when the scandal broke, not if, but when, she would fall with him. Jackson laid out the files, thick and damning, across the conference table. I signed where he told me. "Are you sure you don't want to wait?" he asked. "I've waited 3 years," I said. That night, I stood at the window of the guest house, watching Celine's silhouette move through the main house, her laughter rising and falling as she paced through the kitchen, the living room, the patio. It struck me how little she knew, how certain she was that she had won. She didn't know that the accounts were already frozen, that the postnup she had insisted on so proudly was the legal equivalent of handing me the house, the business, the future, that the boys' private college funds, the luxury car leases, the designer shopping sprees, all of it, came through accounts she no longer controlled. I watched as Ellis dashed through the kitchen, shouting for Cor, who chased him with a towel. Gala drifted behind them, distracted by his phone, thumbs flying. I remembered when they were small enough to lift in my arms. When Celine's eyes softened at the sight of me walking through the door, I wondered, briefly, if they remembered too. At midnight, the night before my 40th birthday, I opened the last email from my lawyer. The subject line was simple: ready. I sat back in the chair, feeling the familiar hum of adrenaline, not sharp or frantic, but cold and measured. In the military, we called this the quiet before. When the plans were made, the paths were cleared, and all that was left was to step forward. I thought about Celine, about Franco, about the boys, about the party they were preparing, the cameras they'd set up, the influencers they'd invited, the public theater they were building. I thought about the applause they expected. And then, very quietly, I smiled. The morning of the party, Celine stood on the balcony in a silk gown, hair swept up, phone to her ear, the city stretching out behind her like a kingdom. From where I stood, she looked almost like the woman I had once fallen in love with. Almost. I turned away, finished my coffee, and dressed. It was time. The ballroom at the Beverly Hills Hotel was packed wall to wall with the kind of people who treated a scandal like a networking opportunity. Champagne flowed in crystal flutes, designer heels clicked across marble, and the air buzzed with low, curated laughter. At the center of it all was Celine, dazzling as ever, wrapped in a silk gown that cost more than most people's monthly rent, hair piled high in effortless perfection. Phone in one hand, flute in the other. She floated from group to group, murmuring promises, touching arms lightly, tossing her head back in practiced laughter. And beside her, Franco Cordero. Franco was the kind of man who had weaponized charm. Broad-shouldered, sharp-jawed, exuding quiet control, he commanded every room without raising his voice. The kind of man who believed his presence was a gift and expected the world to thank him for it. He placed a casual hand at the small of Celine's back, leaned in close as she whispered something into his ear, lips grazing his cheek. Their performance was seamless, but they didn't see me. I stood by the bar, quietly watching, suited in sharp black, no tie, no flash, just presence. My sons moved through the crowd, Gala at the edge, Ellis flirting with 2 girls from UCLA, Cor darting between influencers, holding his phone high to capture everything on video. I had known this was their plan for weeks. Serve me divorce papers in public, humiliate me in front of my peers, brand Celine's new life as a triumph of female empowerment and social ascension, a rebirth. But I hadn't come here to be reborn. I had come to finish the game. The moment came faster than expected. Celine tapped a spoon against her glass, the ringing note slicing through conversation. Heads turned, phones lifted, lights softened. "Everyone," she called, voice syrup smooth. "Thank you for being here to celebrate Ryan." She looked at me across the room, a hint of mock affection in her eyes. A man of discipline, of success, and tonight, a man ready for a new chapter. A ripple of polite laughter. She held up a thick white envelope, the gold seal gleaming under the chandelier light. "My gift to you, love," she smiled. "Freedom." The crowd broke into scattered applause, a few gasps, a few knowing smirks. Gala and Ellis clapped, Core whooped, waving his phone, capturing it all. I walked toward her slowly, calmly, every step deliberate. I took the envelope from her hands. I smiled, small, polite, unbothered, and I signed, a flick of the pen, a light nod. "Thank you, Celine," I said quietly. "You saved me time." There was a pause, a collective intake of breath, and then I reached into my jacket pocket. "Since we're sharing gifts," I continued, raising my voice just enough to carry, "I thought I'd offer something back." The room hushed. I held up 3 papers, crisp, white, unmistakable. Gala Mercer, Ellis Mercer, Core Mercer. I let each name hang in the air. Paternity results. Celine's smile cracked, just slightly. Gala shifted uneasily, eyes darting toward his mother. Ellis froze, the girls beside him giggling nervously. Core, phone still raised, blinked hard, confused. 0% biological match, I said softly. For all 3. The silence was total. Celine's face drained of color. Franco's hand slipped from her waist. Someone let out a low whistle from the back of the room. I looked at Celine. "I loved you," I said. "I loved them." And then I turned to the boys, eyes steady, heart clean. "And I will always wish you well." I walked away, cutting through the crowd, leaving cameras flashing, mouths open, and lives unraveling behind me. Outside, under the hotel's portico, Jackson Hale waited, leaning against a sleek black SUV, arms crossed, expression unreadable. I had met Jackson 10 years ago on a military contract job overseas. Where I was precision, he was brute force. Where I calculated, he improvised. We had seen each other through the worst of it. Foreign deserts, corporate boardrooms, legal minefields. Tonight, he handed me a folder. "You were right," he said simply. Inside were documents, statements, records, photos, all pointing to the same truth. Franco wasn't just a cheater. He was a predator. For years, he had leveraged his position to target young male assistants, interns, entry-level staffers, promises of mentorship, invitations to private meetings, pressure, silence, buyouts, and Celine. She hadn't just been his lover. She had been his financial funnel. Her accounts, her influence, her reputation, all used to keep his house of cards standing. Until tonight. Until me. We drove away in silence. The city blurred past, neon and gold. At home, the mansion was dark. Celine hadn't come back yet. I sat in my office, overlooking the pool, watching the reflection of the sky tremble on the water. I had expected to feel something, triumph, maybe, satisfaction, relief. Instead, I felt a strange, sharp emptiness. They were gone. Not just Celine, not just Franco, the boys, too. All the years, all the birthdays, all the scraped knees and bedtime stories, the college visits, the midnight snack runs, the whispered worries. Gone. Not stolen. Given away. I closed my eyes, letting the quiet stretch. Tomorrow Jackson would release the files. The press would swarm. Franco would burn. Celine would spiral. And me? I would do what I had always done. Get up. Move forward. Survive. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. An unknown number. A message. "We need to talk. About the child." I stared at the screen for a long time, the words blurring, sharpening, blurring again. I didn't reply. Not yet. But I felt it. The first ripple in the water, the next storm rolling in, the next life cracking open. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt something stir in my chest. Not anger, not grief, not vengeance, possibility. The morning after the party was unnervingly quiet. I sat at the long oak table in the dining room of the Bel Air mansion, fingers wrapped around a mug of black coffee gone cold. The sunlight cut clean lines through the floor-to-ceiling windows, hitting the polished marble floor, the glass railing of the staircase, the glossy, abstract paintings Celine had hung with such pride. But the house was silent. Not the peaceful kind, the hollow kind. On the security monitors, I saw Celine pacing in the driveway, barefoot, phone pressed to her ear, silk robe clinging to her shoulders. Her face was tight, her voice sharp as she barked at her attorney, trying to piece together the shreds of her legal safety net. She hadn't come home last night, or maybe she had, but not to sleep. She'd been on the phone for hours, and I had let her run herself ragged. The boys were upstairs. Core's sneakers lay abandoned by the couch. Ellis's phone charger dangled off the kitchen counter. Gayla's designer backpack slumped near the entryway, the luxury logo slashed across it like a taunt. They hadn't spoken to me since the night before. Good. By noon, the fallout had hit. The headlines were everywhere. Franco Cordero accused of sexual coercion, financial fraud. Exclusive, the art world power couple implodes. Mercer and Varelli divorce shocks elite circles. Sources: Mercer family fortune under legal siege. I watched Celine slump against the hood of her car as the push notifications rolled in on her phone. Her bank accounts were frozen. Her brand partnerships evaporated. The PR firms that had once tripped over themselves to pitch her were ghosting her calls. Her world was crumbling, not from one blow, but from a series of precise, invisible cuts. Inside, Core stomped down the stairs, his face flushed and angry. "Dad," he snapped, "you ruined everything." I turned to look at him, calm, measured. "I saved what was mine." He clenched his fists, lips trembling. Ellis hovered behind him, pale and jittery. Gala leaned on the banister, arms folded, gaze darting between his brothers. "You embarrassed us," Core hissed. "You humiliated Mom. You ruined our lives." I rose from my chair, slow and steady, walking until I stood inches from him. He was 15, still shorter, still a boy trying to puff himself up into a man. I looked him in the eyes. "You were never embarrassed when she lied, or cheated, or spent money that didn't belong to her." He flinched. Ellis cleared his throat, voice cracking. "We didn't know." "Yes, you did," I said softly. "You just didn't care." By afternoon, Celine was at the front gates, mascara streaked, robe gone, dressed now in designer jeans and a t-shirt, but her polished sheen was cracking. She banged on the iron gates, voice shrill. "Ryan, we need to talk." I walked outside, stopping just on my side of the threshold. "You have no claim here, Celine." Her face twisted. "We have children." "No," I said evenly. "You have children." Her breath hitched. "Please, I have nothing left." I let the words hang. "That's not my fault." Behind me, I heard the shuffle of footsteps. The boys had gathered in the foyer, peeking through the glass panels of the front door. Celine caught sight of them. "Boys," she called, her voice breaking. "Come here, please." They hesitated. For a flicker, I saw it. Doubt, confusion, shame. Then Gala pulled Core back by the sleeve. Ellis shook his head, eyes wide, jaw tight. They didn't open the door. For the first time, they stayed behind me. Celine's face crumbled. That evening, the final blow landed. Jackson called, voice crisp and efficient. Franco's been arrested. I sat in the home office, the same chair where I had signed the marriage papers 20 years ago, the same desk where I had first drafted the postnup, the same room where I had planned the last month's quiet war. Charges? Sexual misconduct, fraud, tax evasion. It's over, Rye. I exhaled slowly, looking out at the garden Celine had redesigned last spring, at the pool where the boys had played as toddlers, at the glass and stone walls of the house I now owned alone. Later, I found the boys in the media room. The giant screen flickered muted news coverage. Franco in handcuffs, pushed into a black SUV, his sunglasses gone, his face pale and hard. Reporters shouted over each other. Cameras flashed. His lawyer tried to block the crowd. The boys stared. Ellis swallowed hard. We didn't know. I sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on my knees. I believe you. They shifted, uncomfortable. Gala ran a hand through his hair. Cor wiped his nose on his sleeve. I looked at them, really looked. At their panic, their guilt, their small, stunned faces. You can't fix what she broke, I said quietly. But you can choose who you are next. They didn't answer, but they didn't look away. That night, the house was still. Celine was gone. Franco was gone. The cameras were off. The phones were silent. I walked through the rooms, past the trophies, the portraits, the remnants of a life that had been slowly hollowing out for years. I stood by the window, the Los Angeles skyline pulsing in the distance, the faint hum of the city like a whisper through the glass. My phone buzzed once, then twice. A message from Jackson. It's done. A message from an unknown number. We need to talk. It's about the child. I pressed my forehead to the cool window pane, eyes closed. Victory, I realized, was quiet. The next morning, Celine's face was plastered across every news outlet. Her stylist dropped her as a client. Her agent released a statement distancing the firm. Her influencer deals collapsed. Her bank froze her cards. The apartment she'd kept downtown, the one Franco paid for, was seized by investigators. She was a woman untethered, and I was untouchable. Inside the house, Cor drifted into the kitchen, grabbing a bowl of cereal. He mumbled a half-hearted, "Morning, Dad," and sat at the counter. Ellis followed, slouching in quietly, eyes on his phone. Gala walked in last, phone off, hands in his pockets. None of them had spoken to Celine. I poured coffee, saying nothing, letting the silence stretch. Not cold, not angry, just real. We existed in it, the four of us. And maybe, just maybe, something new began. In the evening, I sat on the terrace, the sky deepening into a soft peach-colored dusk. The city glittered below. The pool lights flickered. Somewhere inside, the boys argued over a video game. My phone sat on the table. I picked it up, thumb hovering over the message. We need to talk about the child. I stared at it. Then, slowly, deliberately, I typed back, "Let's talk." The sun over Bel Air was blindingly sharp, casting thin gold lines across the driveway as I stood by the front window, watching Celine pull up. She was no longer the woman who'd commanded rooms, cameras, and social feeds. Hair pulled back in a messy knot, sunglasses covering tired eyes. She wore jeans, a t-shirt, and the weight of public collapse. Overnight, she'd gone from queen to exile, dropped by PR teams, influencer brands, and Franco's art world connections. Her bank accounts were frozen. Her name was tainted. She leaned on the hood of the rental car, phone shaking in her hand as she left another voicemail. For lawyers, a publicist, a friend, It didn't matter. None of them were answering now. Inside, Gala sat at the breakfast bar, scrolling endlessly but saying nothing. Ellis paced behind him, gnawing on his thumbnail. Cor, usually loud, curled up on the couch with a hoodie pulled over his head. They were waiting for me to say something. I didn't. Let them sit in it. Let them feel it. By noon, Celine was at the gates. She pressed the buzzer. "Ryan?" Her voice cracked through the speaker. "Please let me in." I stepped outside, the heat pulling sweat to the back of my neck. "You're not supposed to be here." She gripped the bars like she was drowning. "I need help." I tilted my head, arms crossed. "Help with what, Celine? The lawyers you hired? The accounts you drained? The child you're carrying that isn't mine?" Her breath caught. "They're your sons," she whispered. "No," I said, quiet but sure. "They were—" "You made sure they wouldn't be." For a moment, the facade cracked. Not the public face, not the influencer mask, but the woman underneath, the one I'd loved once, before any of this. "Please, Ryan," she said softly. I have nowhere to go. I could have opened the gate. Instead, I turned and walked away. Inside, the boys were standing in the hallway, pale, still, eyes darting to the door. "Mom's pregnant?" Ellis asked, voice thin. I met his gaze. "Yes. And it's Franco's?" I didn't flinch. "Yes." The silence that followed was heavy and sharp. Cor blinked fast, like he couldn't quite process it. Gala clenched his jaw, hands in fists at his sides. Ellis sank onto the stairs, elbows on his knees. "You knew?" Cor's voice cracked. "For weeks," I said calmly. Gala's eyes filled with something between fury and shame. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because you weren't ready to hear it." Later that afternoon, Jackson arrived, flipping his badge as the gate slid open. We sat in the office, two old soldiers in a quiet war room. "Franco's been moved to federal custody," he said, sliding over a folder. "More women, more under-the-table payouts. It's all coming down." I flipped through the paperwork, photos, statements, wire transfers. It was ugly, but it was clean. "And Celine?" "She's a footnote," Jackson shrugged. "Media's focused on him." I leaned back, exhaling slowly. Good. But Jackson didn't move. "There's something else," he said carefully. He pulled out another file. The child. Franco's child. A boy, 3 years old, abandoned by the mother. An affair gone sideways, a scandal buried in payments, a child left in the system. And now, because of legal connections, the case had landed here. With me. That night, I stood on the balcony, watching the city flicker like 1,000 little fires below. Inside, the house was unnervingly quiet. The boys had gone to bed early, retreating to their rooms without argument. Celine was gone, maybe at a hotel, maybe in a car somewhere, maybe calling every contact left in her cracked, crumbling Rolodex. I sipped a glass of whiskey, the burn sharp in my throat. The message was still on my phone. "We need to talk. It's about the child." I hadn't answered. I didn't know what to say. Around midnight, Gala came downstairs. He stood awkwardly in the doorway, hands shoved in his pockets. "Dad." I looked up. "I'm sorry." The words hit harder than I expected. "For what?" I asked, voice low. "For everything." I nodded once. "It's not all yours to carry," I said quietly. "But some of it is." He came closer, shoulders tight, like he didn't know if he wanted to stay or bolt. "Do you hate us?" I set the glass down. "No." His shoulders sagged, just slightly. I hate the choices you made, I added. But no, Gala, I don't hate you. The next morning, all three boys sat at the kitchen table. Ellis stirred cereal absent-mindedly. Cord doodled circles on a napkin. Gala tapped his fingers, glancing at me every few seconds. They weren't sure if we were a family anymore. To be honest, I wasn't either. But I sat down with them, slowly, deliberately. "We're here," I said. "That's a start." By noon, the call came in. Susan Williams, Child Family Services. She spoke gently but directly. "Mr. Mercer, I understand this is unusual, but given your legal ties, we wanted to ask." I closed my eyes, rubbing the bridge of my nose. "A child?" I repeated softly. "Yes," she said. 3 years old. Leo." My throat tightened. Leo. That evening, Jackson pulled into the driveway, window down, arm draped across the steering wheel. "You're thinking about it," he said. I sat on the front steps, elbows on my knees, watching the sun drop behind the hills. "Yeah." He parked, got out, and sat beside me. "You want advice?" "Not really." He chuckled softly. "Good, because I wasn't going to give any." We sat in silence, two men staring at a house half empty, a future half written. "Reckon you could be a dad again?" Jackson asked quietly. I thought about it. Not in flashes of fear or anger or regret, just possibility. "I don't know," I said honestly. He clapped my shoulder once. "That's the right place to start." The next day, I called Susan back. "I want to meet him." The social worker's office smelled faintly of coffee, lemon disinfectant, and old carpet. I sat in a chair that was too small for me, knees wide, hands clasped loosely, watching the woman across the desk flip through a file. Susan Williams, mid-50s, steady voice, kind but no-nonsense eyes. She looked up. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Mercer." I gave a slight nod. "Ryan's fine." She smiled faintly, setting the file down. "You know why you're here." I exhaled slowly. "Tell me." She folded her hands on the desk. "Leo Cordero, age 3, mother left 6 months ago, father, Franco Cordero, in federal custody, no immediate family claiming guardianship. You're listed on record because of legal connections through Franco's estate." The court flagged it as a possible kinship placement. I rubbed the back of my neck. "So, I'm… what? A candidate?" "A possibility," she said gently, "but you don't have to decide today." She slid a photo across the desk. A little boy, dark hair, soft brown eyes, round cheeks, sitting on a swing, small hands gripping the chains, face half shy, half curious. My throat tightened. Leo. That night, I sat on the terrace of the Bel Air house, whiskey in one hand, the city lights below a restless, glittering sprawl. The boys were inside, Gala in his room, headphones on, Ellis watching TV in the media room, Cor asleep on the couch, mouth open slightly, blanket half pulled over him. Celine was gone. Truly gone now. Her lawyer had called earlier in the day. She was leaving LA trying to cut a deal, likely never coming back. No goodbyes, no apologies, no second acts. Good. I sipped the drink, exhaling slowly. In the military, they used to tell us there's a difference between surviving and living. For a long time, I hadn't known the difference. Now, maybe I was starting to. The next morning, I pulled up outside the foster home. Yellow house, peeling trim, small playground in back. Kids' bikes scattered across the lawn. I sat in the car for a full minute, palms on the steering wheel, watching my breath fog the windshield. You don't have to do this, a voice whispered. But I wanted to. Inside, Susan led me down a narrow hallway. Most of the kids are in group play, she murmured, but Leo prefers quiet time. We stopped at a small room. Through the glass, I saw him, tiny, knees tucked up, stacking wooden blocks with intense focus, tongue poking slightly from the corner of his mouth. He was beautiful. Not because of Franco, not because of bloodlines or legal ties, because he was a child, a whole little person the world had almost forgotten. Would you like to go in? Susan asked softly. I swallowed hard. Yes. He looked up as I entered, cautious but not frightened, his small face open in that way only very young children's faces can be. Hi, Leo, I said quietly, kneeling down to his level. He didn't answer. He handed me a block. My chest tightened. Thank you, buddy. He smiled. We sat on the floor for nearly an hour, building towers, knocking them down, building them again. No big talks, no heavy meaning, just motion, presence, quiet laughter. When Susan returned, she smiled. He's taken to you. I looked up, heart pounding in a way I hadn't felt in years. I want to start the process, I said. That night, back home, Gala knocked on my office door. Can we talk? I nodded, setting the papers down. He stepped in cautiously. I heard about the kid. I met his eyes. Yeah. He rubbed his jaw, gaze flicking away. Do you want help? The question hit me harder than I expected. I sat back, exhaling softly. Yeah, Gala, I do. In the days that followed, the house shifted. Not fast, not dramatically, but shift it did. Ellis started coming to dinner without being called. Cor left his door open more. Gala checked in, lingering at the office door, offering small, awkward moments of connection. We were still fractured, but maybe not broken. 3 weeks later, Leo came home. The formalities were temporary placement, background checks, home assessments. The reality was simpler. He was here, with us. He moved through the mansion like a small storm, giggling down hallways, toddling up to the big brothers who stared at him in a mix of wonder and confusion. Ellis let him crawl into his lap during movie nights. Cor made him laugh until he hiccuped. Gala, for all his cool detachment, started carrying him on his shoulders, pretending not to smile when Leo squealed with delight. One night, I found myself standing in the nursery doorway, watching Leo sleep, small hand curled under his cheek, dark lashes soft against his skin. Jackson's words came back to me. You're not a destroyer, Rye. You're a builder. For the first time, I believed it. The next morning, over breakfast, Ellis blurted, So, are you gonna, keep him? I raised a brow. You make it sound like a stray puppy. Ellis flushed. No, I mean, adopt. I set the coffee down, considering. Yes, Cor grinned. Cool. Gala, from across the table, met my gaze and nodded. Later that day, I signed the initial adoption papers. My name, my responsibility, my choice. It was terrifying. It was right. At night, after everyone was asleep, I sat alone in the office. The headlines had faded. Celine was a tabloid memory. Franco was awaiting trial. The empire I had built was intact. And here, in the quiet, was the one thing I hadn't planned for, hadn't strategized, hadn't armored myself against: hope. I picked up my phone. A message from Jackson. Proud of you, Rye. I smiled faintly, typing back, Thanks, brother. Then I set the phone down, leaned back, and let myself sit. Not in anticipation, not in battle readiness, not in pain. Just here, just now, alive. The house felt different now. It wasn't the marble floors or the glass walls or the sleek black fixtures. Those had always been there. It wasn't the landscaped yard, the infinity pool, or the art on the walls. It was the sound. Small feet padding across the hall in the early morning. The soft thud of blocks hitting the floor. The sharp, bright burst of a child's laugh echoing down the corridor. Leo. He was only 3, but his presence filled the house in a way no luxury renovation ever could. I watched him now from the kitchen, where I leaned against the counter sipping coffee. He was on the rug, brow furrowed in concentration, stacking towers of plastic bricks while Core lay nearby, coaching him gently, slipping into the role of big brother more easily than I dared to hope. Ellis walked in, hair messy, still half asleep, and ruffled Leo's hair as he passed. Gala followed, earbuds out for once, quietly sliding a plate onto the table, no complaints, no attitude. We weren't perfect, but we were here. We were trying. A few months ago, I wouldn't have believed this. Back then, I was standing in the middle of a public implosion, divorce papers handed to me at my own birthday party, children cheering for their mother, the woman I'd built a life with collapsing everything we had for the thrill of something shinier, younger, richer. I'd burned it all down in return, not out of vengeance, but out of precision. Cold, surgical dismantling of the lies. Freezing accounts, triggering investigations, holding up paternity tests like a mirror no one wanted to face. Celine fell. Franco fell. The sons were left wobbling on the edge, unsure where to land. I didn't think any of them would come back, but they did. Or maybe, I realized, I was the one who had finally made space for them to return. On the terrace that afternoon, I watched the sun dip low, casting streaks of gold across the city skyline. Leo ran circles on the patio, Core chasing him half-heartedly, Ellis scrolling through his phone nearby, Gala leaning against the rail, arms crossed, watching them all with that too old for his age expression I recognized too well. Jackson called. "How's the Empire?" he asked, voice warm, teasing. I laughed softly. "No empire left, man. Just a house. A family." He paused, then said quietly, "Sounds like an upgrade." At night, after the boys were asleep, I walked the halls alone. The house was still grand, polished stone, curated lighting, designer touches, but it felt less like a monument now, less like something I had to guard. It felt, for the first time in years, like a place people lived. I peeked into Leo's room. He was curled up in a tangle of blankets, his thumb near his mouth, the soft rise and fall of his breath the only sound in the room. In Core's room, a pair of sneakers lay half under the bed, a video game controller on the rug. In Ellis's room, books were piled messily on the desk, his guitar propped against the wall. In Gala's room, the faint glow of a laptop, a quiet hum of music. It wasn't just noise. It was life. Sometimes late at night, I thought about Celine. I wondered if she missed any of this, if she regretted the choices, the betrayal, the public humiliation, the way her empire had cracked and crumbled, if she missed the boys, if she ever thought about me. But those thoughts didn't have claws anymore. They didn't pierce, they just passed through. Some wounds stop bleeding, some ghosts stop haunting. I sat on the edge of my bed, running a hand over my face. Leo, a child I hadn't known existed 6 months ago, a child I hadn't planned for, hadn't imagined, hadn't wanted, and now couldn't imagine the house without. Gala, Ellis, Core. Boys who weren't mine by blood, but who stood under this roof now because we had chosen, deliberately, painfully, slowly, to become something new. A family not by biology, not by default, but by decision. One morning, I found Gala standing at the window, staring out at the garden. "College tours next week," I said quietly. "You ready?" He nodded, jaw tight. "Yeah." I waited, watching him fidget, watching the words gather and knot behind his teeth. "I was awful to you," he said suddenly. I didn't flinch, didn't rush to console, just waited. "I was awful," he repeated, voice breaking. "And you're still here." I reached out, rested a hand briefly on his shoulder. "I'm not going anywhere, son." Ellis joined me one night in the kitchen, sitting on the counter, legs swinging. "Do you think Mom's okay?" he asked quietly. I met his eyes. "I think Mom has to figure out who she is, just like we did." He nodded slowly, exhaling. We sat there for a long time, no more words between us. Cor slipped into my office one afternoon, Leo on his hip. "Dad, you know Leo called you Dada today?" He grinned, breathless. First time. The word hit me straight in the chest. I smiled, slow and careful. "Yeah?" "Yeah," Cor beamed, bouncing the toddler gently. "He's yours now, huh?" I swallowed, throat tight. "Yeah," I murmured. "He's ours." The night before Leo's official adoption hearing, I stood alone on the terrace again, watching the city light ripple and shimmer. Jackson texted, "Proud of you, brother." I typed back, "Couldn't have done it without you." Inside, I heard the thud of little feet, the clatter of something dropped, the burst of Cor's laughter, Ellis's shout, Gala's exasperated groan, and in the middle of it, Leo's small, delighted squeal. I closed my eyes, breathed in the cool air, and let it settle deep. The next morning, we stood in court. Susan from Child Family Services smiled as she led us through the last of the paperwork. Gala straightened his jacket. Ellis jostled Cor, who tried and failed to look serious. Leo clung to my leg, wide-eyed and quiet, his small hand curled into my pants. The judge read through the documents, eyes crinkling kindly as she looked at us. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "I am pleased to grant full legal custody and adoption of Leo Cordero." I felt a sharp, clean pull in my chest. A weight, yes, but the right kind. Leo looked up at me, uncertain, and I bent down, scooping him into my arms. "You ready to go home, buddy?" I whispered. He grinned, pressing his face into my neck. We walked out of the courthouse into the bright, cutting Los Angeles sun. We were a mess, a tangle of boys, laughs, awkward jokes, Leo babbling nonsense, Cor hoisting him up, Ellis grinning wide, Gala rolling his eyes but smiling despite himself. And me, Ryan Mercer, a man who had lost everything he thought mattered, and gained everything he hadn't known he needed. That night, after everyone was asleep, I stood in the nursery doorway, watching Leo breathe, soft and even, a small arm draped over a stuffed bear. I leaned against the frame, closing my eyes. Not the man I had been, not the man they'd tried to break, not the man they thought they'd defeated. Something better, something harder, something whole. In the quiet, I whispered, almost to myself, "We're okay now." In the quiet aftermath of loss and betrayal, something unexpected often rises. Not triumph, not revenge, but clarity. It's in the stillness after the noise, the space left behind when the battles end, that a person can finally hear the truth of their own heart. We live in a world that measures success in trophies, followers, wealth, and appearances. But when all those fall away, when the crowds thin and the cameras turn off, what's left is something more essential: the small, unspoken moments of presence. A hand reached out in forgiveness. A room filled with laughter again. A life rebuilt, not from victory, but from choice. This story is not about the perfect ending or flawless justice. It's about the quiet, stubborn resilience of the human spirit. About how survival isn't the same as healing, and how sometimes the most courageous thing we can do is let go of the person we were to become the person we were meant to be. Pain shapes us. Betrayal hardens us. But connection, the real, raw, messy kind, softens us again. And in that softening, we find strength not rooted in control or retaliation, but in grace. There is no map for rebuilding after devastation, no guidebook for how to take back your life after it's been hollowed out. But there are small, stubborn steps: showing up, choosing love again, risking disappointment, offering kindness when you could close your heart. The measure of a person is not how they hold power, but how they rebuild when power is stripped away. In the end, we all face moments when we stand in front of the mirror, unmasked, alone, asking, "Who am I now?" And if we're lucky, or maybe, if we're brave, we answer not with bitterness or defeat, but with a quiet, steady promise. I am still here. I am still standing. And I am not done becoming. Thank you for walking through this story with us. If it stirred something in you, if you saw a reflection of your own strength, your own hurt, or your own hope, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice is part of this space, part of the community we're building here, one story at a time. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new chapter. Together, we explore the messy, beautiful, painful, and powerful edges of what it means to be human. Thank you for being here. We're grateful you came, and we hope you stay.